Hey everybody, this is TJR. I wanted to do a video with my final thoughts so far regarding the series Star Trek Discovery. If you've watched my recent videos, you know I've canceled my subscription to CBS All Access. I'm going to wait until the series is completed and then probably watch it on DVD and Blu-ray. At the time that I recorded my video about canceling my subscription to CBS All Access, I stated that my decision had nothing to do with whether or not I thought the show was good or bad. And I don't think that Star Trek Discovery is a bad show. In fact, I think it has potential to be a great show. One of my main problems with the premise of the show is that the show's producers are telling us that this is taking place in the Prime Universe continuity, the universe of the TV shows and the theatrical motion pictures with the original and Next Generation cast. It's not taking place in the universe of the J.J. Abrams films. So they're telling us this. They're saying it's taking place 10 years, my apologies, 10 years prior to the original series that starred William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. They're telling us that it takes place during this continuity, and then they are at times completely contradicting the continuity or ignoring it. For example, if this is taking place 10 years prior to the original series, why has the Klingon culture changed? Since when did the Klingons eat people? When did Spock ever state that he had an adopted human sister? And since when can Vulcans mentally connect with other people that they have mind melded with in the past across light years of space? And if this series is set 10 years prior to the original series, why is it technologically looking so much more advanced? Why does it look like it's taking place decades after the Next Generation, DS9, and Voyager series timelines? Whether you love or hate the last Star Trek series, Enterprise, the producers and designers of that show had quite the dilemma. How do you design the look of a Star Trek prequel series set 100 years prior to the original series? It has to look less advanced than a series created in the 60s, but still has to look like a modern show. I feel like the design team on that series succeeded. But Star Trek Discovery doesn't look like it's taking place 10 years prior to the original series. It looks like it's taking place far in the future of any other Star Trek series we've had so far. Now, none of this would matter if the show's producers just said, it's a reboot, that's all. It's not set in the continuity of that series. Fine, I could accept that. Also, it would be fine if they said, yeah, it's in the continuity of the TV shows, but it's far in the future. That could work well for it too. In fact, one YouTube channel whose commentaries I enjoy from time to time, Geekvolution, commented on the fact that they should have set this series 25 years after the whole Next Generation timeline. Had they done that, well, then now they have the perfect opportunity to bring actors like Patrick Stewart and Jonathan Frakes from that series and have them play older versions of those characters, and stating basically this is a missed opportunity, and I agree with that. In fact, why not just simply set this series 10 years prior to the J.J. Abrams films? After all, it looks like it is. I understand there's some legal copyright issues involved with that concept, and I won't go there right now. That's another discussion for another day. Now, myself personally, I kind of thought there was a lost opportunity in this whole idea of doing a series set 10 years prior to the original series. And to me, that opportunity was, why not go retro? Why not do a retro-looking Star Trek series? There's already been a precedent set for this on the internet. Some of you may or may have not seen Star Trek The New Voyages from 2008. And now there's the new series, Star Trek Continues, that began in 2016. These shows try to continue on from the original series. They replicate the look of the series. They replicate the music of the series. Well, they're actually using the original soundtrack music. But one thing they've changed is they've added the CGI special effects. So you've kind of got that retro look of the 60s show, but you've got modern day special effects. And I think the two, if done right, look really well together. And these two internet fan-based, or I should say fan-produced series have accomplished this and shown that it can be done. Why not do this as an actual broadcast TV show? I think this would have gone over big time with fans. The only reason I can think of as to why they didn't go in this direction is, well, one, it gives credence to these fan-produced shows that they know what they're doing, number one, and that might be an ego thing. The other thing might be the fact that there is an audience for Star Trek that has been created by the J.J. Abrams films. This is an audience that was not into the original TV shows, but came into Star Trek via these motion pictures. And maybe they're thinking, well, if we do something that looks like these old TV shows, this audience isn't going to understand it and they're not going to relate to it. But if that was the thinking for not taking that direction, the only thing I would say to that is that the audience that's been with it since the original series is the larger audience and the more loyal audience at this point. Now, I grew up reading DC and Marvel superhero comics as a kid, and I got very used to the idea of reboots. I got very used to the idea of a new creative team comes on board a title, like, say, Spider-Man or Iron Man, and decides to do a completely different take on the character, even within the established continuity that they decide to do this. But I'm also used to the idea of, hey, let's completely reboot everything, like DC Comics when they did the Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this, to me, doesn't bother me if you just say, yeah, it's a reboot, it's a reimagining. And it is possible that when 3, 2, 1, it is possible that the reason why the producers of the show are telling us, well, this is in continuity, it takes place 10 years prior to the original series, and yet it looks nothing like it takes place 10 years prior to the original series. The reason for that might be that this series is going to deal with some sort of quantum physics collapse timeline, multi-universal storyline, in which we're actually looking at a different timeline that will, by the end of it, collapse into itself and then give birth to the timeline that we now know as Star Trek, the original series, and the TV shows that followed it. This is a possibility, of course. I have considered this. And maybe that's a way of doing a story outside of continuity, yet still saying it's within continuity. But if I just ignore all of this contradiction, and if I just say to myself, Star Trek Discovery is a complete reboot, or it's a complete reimagining, I can now enjoy the show for what it is and just set aside everything I know about the previous TV shows. If I do this, then so far it becomes a very promising, different take on Star Trek. I know that, of course, I have to reserve judgment on the series until the series is complete. But continuity contradictions aside, we could be looking at what will end up being a very exciting version of Star Trek if we are patient and just let the story unfold and let the story tell itself. But I realize that a lot of Star Trek fans, like myself, we are not used to seeing Star Trek in this way. And I am not referring to it being darker. I am talking about it not playing out episodically in the manner that we are used to versus the more modern approach that TV takes now, where we have a season-long narrative, like a lot of today's cable TV shows do, where it's more like watching a 15 or 18-hour movie. Now, I could be wrong about all of this. I could be completely off. But from the 3 episodes I've seen so far, and from the plot synopsis reviews I've read so far about the episodes that have taken place after, it feels like the show is developing a story arc about what happens when the principles and values of the Federation are threatened from within. Captain Lorca is the personification of that threat, and Michael Burnham will become the one who ends up standing up for and defending the principles of the Federation in this series. In fact, we have had single episodes of the earlier Star Trek shows that have dealt with this theme, but in this format, we can have a more nuanced take on that theme, as opposed to a more let's hit the nail on the head approach that is sometimes needed when a series is episodic and only has one episode to make its point. I think that taking this approach to this theme could be very powerful, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I could be wrong and the whole thing could just be going south, but I am optimistic. Star Trek is an optimistic series, so I remain optimistic. And this is where my optimistic side sees this show going. What I'm not optimistic about is subscribing to CBS All Access, so I will be waiting to see the series after it's completed. Anyways, those are my thoughts. What do you think? What are your thoughts? Looking forward to checking out your comments, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye.